The dust cloud rose on the horizon like a warning, but it wasn't until the screams reached Caleb Crawford's ears that he understood something was terribly wrong. Arizona Territory. 1878, the land was as unforgiving as the men who sought to tame it, and Caleb had seen his share of both. But nothing had prepared him for the sight that greeted him, as he urged his horse forward through the scorching summer heat toward Chloride. A woman was being dragged behind a horse at breakneck speed, her body bouncing violently over rocks and cacti, her hands bound to a rope attached to the saddle of a panicked Mustang. Blood streaked her torn dress, and even from this distance, Caleb could see she wouldn't survive much longer. Without hesitation, he spurred his horse into action, racing parallel to the runaway. The woman's eyes found his wide with terror and fading consciousness as he pushed his stallion to its limits. Drawing closer, Caleb yanked his knife from his boot and calculated the precise moment when horse, woman, and he would converge. "Hold on," he shouted, though he doubted she could hear him over the thundering hooves. With one powerful thrust, he leaned from his saddle, slashing the rope in a clean cut. The woman tumbled like a rag doll, and Caleb threw himself from his horse, landing hard but managing to catch her before she smashed against a boulder. They rolled together in the dirt, his arms protectively wrapped around her battered body as the Mustang continued its wild flight into the distance. For a moment, all was silent except for their labored breathing and the settling dust around them. Caleb looked down at the woman in his arms, her face lacerated and bruised but unmistakably beautiful beneath the grime and blood. "Miss, can you hear me?" he asked, gently brushing tangled honey-blonde hair from her face. Her eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes the color of desert sage. "Don't. Let them. Take me back," she whispered before consciousness abandoned her completely. Caleb had no idea who they were, but one thing was certain: this woman needed help and fast. Lifting her carefully onto his horse, he mounted behind her, cradling her against his chest as he set a course for his small ranch outside Chloride. Doc Wilson would have to be summoned, but Caleb wasn't taking any chances bringing her into town before he knew what kind of trouble followed her. As they rode, the woman's head nestled against his shoulder. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of hell she'd escaped and what kind of hell might be coming after her. Hannah Elliott had never imagined dying in the desert. She'd imagined many endings since fleeing Boston 3 months ago, perhaps a bullet from her pursuer, or starvation as her meager funds dwindled, but not this terrifying, brutal death being dragged behind a horse her captor had deliberately spooked. When consciousness returned, it came in waves of pain so intense she nearly slipped away again. She was lying on something soft, a bed, in a dimly lit room that smelled of leather, coffee, and pine smoke. Her body felt as though it had been shattered and poorly reassembled. "Easy now," a deep voice cautioned as she tried to move. "Doc says you shouldn't be stirring for at least a day or two." Hannah forced her eyes open, wincing at even that small movement. A man sat beside the bed, his features coming into focus slowly. Broad-shouldered and sun-weathered, with eyes the rich brown of coffee and hair the color of wheat kissed by the sun. He wasn't handsome in the polished way of Boston gentlemen, but there was something arresting in the quiet strength of his face. "You cut the rope," she whispered, her throat raw from screaming and dust. He nodded, pouring water from a pitcher and helping her take a sip. "Name's Caleb Crawford. You're at my ranch about 4 miles outside Chloride." "Hannah Elliott," she hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Thank you for saving my life, Mr. Crawford. Just Caleb is fine, and you can thank me by telling me who tied you to that horse and why." His voice remained gentle, but there was steel beneath it. Hannah closed her eyes. "Victor Atwood. He works for my former fiancé." I broke our engagement when I discovered what kind of man he truly is. He sent Victor to bring me back. The memories threatened to overwhelm her, the months of hiding, changing names, working menial jobs to survive, always looking over her shoulder. And this fiancé would be Preston Holloway, Roman 3. His family practically owns half of Boston. She swallowed hard. He doesn't take rejection well. Caleb's expression darkened. Well, Miss Elliott, I don't take kindly to men who drag women behind horses. You're safe here until you recover. After that, we can figure out what's next. He won't stop, Hannah whispered. Preston never stops until he gets what he wants. Then he's never met someone who wants something more, Caleb replied with quiet determination. Rest now. We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes. Hannah wanted to protest, to explain that no one could stand against the Holloways, but exhaustion claimed her before she could form the words. Caleb watched her drift back to sleep, her bruised face finally relaxing. Doc Wilson had patched her up as best he could, marveling that she'd survived at all. Multiple lacerations, bruises everywhere, 2 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and a nasty head wound, but nothing that wouldn't heal with time and care. What concerned Caleb more was the haunted look in her eyes when she spoke of this Preston fellow. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of hunted animals and hunted men. It was the look of someone who believed escape was temporary at best. He moved to the window, gazing out at the darkening desert landscape. His ranch wasn't much, a modest house, a barn, a corral, and about 50 head of cattle, but it was his. Paid for with 10 years of hard work after leaving Tennessee with nothing but determination and the skills his father had taught him. Chloride was still a young town, built around the silver mines that gave it its name and purpose. Caleb had chosen this land deliberately for its distance from the town's growing pains while remaining close enough to sell his cattle and buy supplies. He valued his solitude, his independence. And now he had a wounded woman in his bed and potentially dangerous men on her trail. What have you gotten yourself into, Crawford? He muttered, running a hand through his hair. The answer came simply, whatever it took to keep Hannah Elliott safe. Morning brought Hannah back to consciousness with marginally less pain. She found herself alone in the modest bedroom, sunlight filtering through gingham curtains. Taking inventory of her injuries, she moved experimentally, grateful that while everything hurt, she could move. Doc Wilson had apparently done good work. The bedroom door creaked open and Caleb entered carrying a tray. Thought you might be awake. Brought some breakfast, nothing fancy, just eggs and biscuits. Thank you. Hannah tried to sit up, wincing at the protest from her ribs. Caleb set down the tray and helped position pillows behind her back. Doc said to keep you still, but I figure sitting up to eat is necessary. Hannah noticed his hands, strong but careful, calloused from work but gentle in their movements. So different from Preston's soft, manicured hands that could turn cruel in an instant. I'm imposing terribly, she said after swallowing a bite of surprisingly good biscuit. Not really. Been meaning to air out that spare bedroom anyway, he replied with a slight smile that transformed his serious face. Spare bedroom. Then where did you sleep? Chair in the main room. Wasn't too bad. Hannah studied him, trying to understand this man who'd risked his life for a stranger and then given up his bed without complaint. Mr. Crawford, Caleb, I need to be honest with you. The men looking for me are dangerous. I can't stay once I'm able to travel. Where will you go? The question hung between them, highlighting the emptiness of her options. I don't know. Somewhere Preston can't find me. Why not stay in Chloride for a while? It's small, but we're growing. Might be work for a lady with education, which I'm guessing you have. Hannah touched the locket at her throat, the only possession of value she hadn't sold. I was a teacher in Boston, yes, But Preston has connections everywhere. He'll offer rewards. Someone will talk. Folks around here mind their business, Caleb said, though his expression suggested he understood her concern. Rest today. Tomorrow's soon enough to make plans. After he left, Hannah contemplated her situation. She'd been running for months, each time establishing herself briefly before Preston's men found her. Chicago, St. Louis, Denver, each time getting farther west, each time believing she might have finally escaped. But Chloride, Arizona territory. Perhaps this dusty, remote mining town might be far enough. Perhaps she could disappear here, become someone new again. Or perhaps Caleb Crawford represented something she hadn't dared consider an ally. The next 3 days established a routine. Hannah regained strength gradually, progressing from sitting in bed to moving carefully around Caleb's modest home. He worked his ranch during the day, checking cattle, mending fences, and other tasks Hannah only vaguely understood, and returned to cook simple but hearty meals they shared at his kitchen table. Their conversations revealed him piece by piece. The son of a Tennessee farmer who'd fought for the Union, taught his boy everything he knew, then died of pneumonia when Caleb was 17. The journey west, working cattle drives, saving every penny until he could buy this land. His quiet pride in what he'd built, and his simple philosophy of hard work and treating people fairly. In return, Hannah shared carefully edited stories of teaching in Boston, her love of literature, her dream of someday opening her own school. She avoided mention of Preston beyond the basics, though she sensed Caleb's curiosity. On the 4th evening, as they sat on his porch watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson, Caleb finally asked the question she'd been dreading. "What did this Preston fellow do that made you run all the way to Arizona territory?" Hannah's fingers found the small scar at her hairline, a souvenir from the first time Preston had shown his true nature. "He's not the man people believe him to be. His family name and money hide who he truly is." "And who is that?" "A monster who believes ownership extends to people, especially women." She drew a shaky breath. "Our engagement was arranged. My father's business was failing, and the Holloways offered partnership in exchange for my hand. It seemed acceptable at first. Preston was charming, educated, respected." The setting sun cast long shadows across the porch as Hannah continued. "After the engagement was announced, I began seeing another side of him, possessiveness that became control, anger when I contradicted him. Then one night, after I'd spoken too long with another gentleman at a party, Caleb's hand found hers in the gathering darkness, a silent encouragement. He waited until we were alone and showed me what happens to those who displease him. Said it was a lesson I needed to learn before becoming his wife. The memory of that night, the blows, the threats, the absolute certainty that this would be her life forever made her shudder. No one believed me. His family physician claimed I'd fallen. My own parents suggested I'd misunderstood a moment of passion." Caleb's fingers tightened around hers, his jaw clenched in controlled anger. "So you ran." "I disappeared one night with what little money I had saved from my teaching position, changed my name, my appearance, took odd jobs. But his men always found me eventually." She looked out at the darkening desert. "Victor Atwood is particularly devoted to Preston. When he caught me outside Denver, he said he'd make an example of me for embarrassing the Holloway name." The memory of being tied to that horse, the terror as it bolted, made her voice falter. "I thought I was going to die. Then you appeared like something from a dream, cutting that rope." They sat in silence as the first stars appeared. Finally, Caleb spoke, his voice low and determined. "You don't have to run anymore, Hannah, not unless you want to." "What are you suggesting?" "Stay in Chloride. The school teacher left last month to get married. Town needs someone educated to teach the children. I know folks who'd stand with us if trouble comes looking." "Us," Hannah whispered. Caleb's eyes met hers, steady and certain. "I didn't risk my neck cutting that rope just to send you back into danger. Yes, us." Something unfamiliar and warm bloomed in Hannah's chest. Hope, perhaps, or the first fragile seed of trust. "Let me think about it," she said finally. "Take all the time you need. But know this, if Preston Holloway or his men come to Chloride looking for you, they'll find more than they bargained for." In the soft desert night, Hannah believed him. The following morning, Caleb rode into Chloride to speak with the town council about their need for a teacher. Hannah spent the day alone at the ranch, testing her healing body by walking farther than before, eventually making it to the corral where Caleb's horses grazed peacefully. The desert beauty surrounding the small ranch had begun to work its way into her heart, so different from Boston's manicured gardens and crowded streets. Here, everything was raw and honest, from the dramatic mountains to the resilient plants that somehow thrived in the harsh conditions. Like Caleb himself, she thought, there was nothing false about the man, nothing hidden. What you saw was what you got: strength without cruelty, confidence without arrogance. The sound of approaching hoofbeats pulled her from her reverie. Too early for Caleb to be returning. Hannah retreated toward the house, heart hammering as she considered whether to hide or face whoever was coming. The rider who appeared was neither Caleb nor, thankfully, Victor Atwood. Instead, it was an older woman with steel-gray hair braided severely back from a weathered face, riding a mule with the confidence of someone born in the saddle. "You must be the girl Caleb rescued," the woman called, dismounting with surprising agility. "Edith Harris. I run the general store in town and serve as our unofficial welcoming committee." Hannah approached cautiously. "Hannah Elliott. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Harris." "Miss Harris, thank you very much. Never found a man worth trading my independence for." She assessed Hannah with sharp eyes. "Caleb's in town talking up your teaching credentials, something fierce. Thought I'd come see this paragon of education for myself." Despite her wariness, Hannah found herself warming to the direct older woman. "I'm afraid I have no formal credentials with me. Everything was left behind when I departed Boston. Don't need papers out here, girl. Need patience with stubborn children and knowledge worth sharing." Miss Harris gestured to the porch. "Shall we sit? My old bones don't stand as long as they used to." Over the next hour, Hannah discovered that Edith Harris was Chloride's unofficial historian and gossip repository. She outlined the town's 5-year history since silver was discovered, named every prominent citizen and their shortcomings, and explained the desperate need for someone to educate the growing number of children. Last teacher was a prissy thing from Philadelphia who couldn't handle the dust. Married a mine supervisor and fled to Tucson. Edith snorted. "You look made of sterner stuff, especially after what you've been through." Hannah stiffened. "What has Caleb told you?" "Enough to know you're running from something nasty back east. Don't worry, he didn't share details." Edith's expression softened marginally. "Listen, girl, Chloride's not much, but we look after our own. Caleb Crawford's respected here. If he says you need protecting, folks will stand by that. Even when they learn a wealthy man might offer a reward for information about me." Edith's eyes narrowed. "Money talks, I won't lie, but loyalty matters out here where the wrong decision can kill you. Besides," she added with a sly smile, "ain't often we see Caleb Crawford take an interest in anything besides his cattle. That alone makes most folks inclined to help you." "We barely know each other," Hannah protested, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "Maybe so. But I've known that boy since he arrived here with nothing but determination. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Edith stood, adjusting her skirts. Town council meets tonight. If they approve, and school starts Monday in the old church building. 23 children aged 6 to 16, most barely literate. Think you can handle that? Hannah thought of the children she'd taught in Boston, of the joy she'd found in opening young minds to knowledge. She thought of Caleb's quiet confidence in her abilities. "Yes," she said firmly. "I believe I can." Edith nodded approvingly. "Good. I'll bring by some appropriate dresses tomorrow. Can't have the teacher looking like she borrowed clothes from a rancher twice her size." After Edith departed, Hannah returned to the porch, her mind racing with possibilities. A teaching position, a community that might protect her, a chance to stop running, and Caleb Crawford, who looked at her in a way that made Edith Harris notice. Could she truly build a life here, or was she merely postponing the inevitable day when Preston's reach would extend even to this remote corner of the territory? Caleb returned as the sun was setting, a broad smile lighting his face as he dismounted. "It's settled. Town council voted unanimously to hire you as Chloride's new teacher. Salary's modest but includes a small cabin behind the schoolhouse." Hannah met him at the corral, her own smile matching his. "Edith Harris paid me a visit. I think I was being evaluated." Caleb chuckled. "Should have warned you about her. Nothing happens in Chloride without Edith knowing, usually before it happens. She mentioned bringing me suitable clothes tomorrow." "That sounds like Edith. She's got opinions on everything, including what a proper school teacher should wear." He hesitated. "Does this mean you're staying?" The hope in his eyes made Hannah's heart skip. "I think I'd like to try. But Caleb, I need to be honest, I'm still afraid. Victor Atwood knows I'm somewhere in this area. It's only a matter of time before he returns, possibly with others." Caleb unsaddled his horse, his movements efficient as he considered her words. "Sheriff Jenkins is a good man. Once he knows the situation, he'll keep an eye out for strangers, and I've got friends among the miners and ranchers who'll do the same. You're putting a lot of faith in me. Why?" Hannah asked the question that had been troubling her. "You don't really know me." Caleb turned, his expression serious. "I know enough. I know you're brave enough to leave everything behind rather than submit to cruelty. I know you care about teaching children. And I know that when I cut that rope and caught you, something changed for me." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I can't explain it, Hannah. I just know I want you safe. I want you here." The raw honesty in his words left her breathless. No flowery declarations or practiced charm, just simple truth. "Then I'll stay," she whispered. "At least until I see if I can make a life here." The smile that transformed his face was worth any risk. Sunday evening found Hannah installed in the small but neat cabin behind Chloride's combination church and schoolhouse. Edith Harris had indeed provided appropriate clothing, along with introductions to key townspeople: the sheriff, the mayor, the mine manager, and various mothers of her future pupils. Each had welcomed her warmly, though Hannah detected curiosity about her relationship with Caleb simmering beneath their polite inquiries. Caleb himself had helped move her few possessions and ensured the cabin was secure, installing new locks on the doors and windows. He'd been reluctant to leave her alone, but Hannah insisted she needed to establish independence if she was to be respected as the town's teacher. "I'll be fine," she assured him as he lingered at her door. "Sheriff Jenkins promised to patrol past regularly, and Edith says she's a light sleeper across the way." Caleb nodded, though concern still shadowed his eyes. "I'll ride in tomorrow after school lets out, see how your first day went." "I'd like that." Hannah found herself standing awkwardly, uncertain of the proper farewell. They weren't courting formally, yet something deeper than friendship had clearly formed between them. Caleb solved the dilemma by taking her hand and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Sleep well, Miss Elliott. Chloride's lucky to have you." The warmth of that simple gesture lingered long after he'd ridden away. Monday dawned clear and bright. Hannah, dressed carefully in a navy skirt and white shirtwaist Edith had provided, her hair neatly arranged, her mother's locket her only adornment. As the church bell rang 8 o'clock, she opened the schoolhouse door to find 23 children of various ages and backgrounds waiting with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. "Good morning," she said with more confidence than she felt. "I'm Miss Elliott, your new teacher." A tiny girl with blonde braids raised her hand immediately. "Are you really from Boston? Pa says that's farther than the moon." Hannah smiled. "It certainly felt that way when I was traveling here. Yes, I'm from Boston, but Chloride is my home now." "And who might you be?" "Mary Jenkins. My pa's the sheriff." One by one, Hannah learned their names: children of miners, shopkeepers, ranchers, and in 2 cases, the saloon's bartender. Some had attended school before, others had never held a book. All shared the direct, unvarnished honesty of the frontier. By noon, Hannah had assessed their varied abilities and begun organizing them into appropriate learning groups. By the final bell at 3 o'clock, she had assigned readings, scheduled recitations, and earned the tentative respect of even the most skeptical older boys with her knowledge of mathematics and geography. As the children filed out, Sheriff Jenkins appeared at the doorway, his weathered face serious beneath his mustache. "Miss Elliott, might I have a word?" Hannah's heart stuttered. "Of course, Sheriff. Is something wrong?" "Maybe, maybe not." He closed the door behind the last departing child. "Stranger rode into town this morning, asking questions about a woman from back east. Didn't give much description beyond blonde and educated. Claimed to be a concerned brother looking for his sister." Cold fear washed through Hannah. "Did he give a name?" "Called himself Victor." The sheriff watched her reaction closely. "Caleb mentioned you might have trouble following you. This the man?" Hannah nodded, her throat too dry for words. "Thought as much from your face. I told him hadn't seen any strangers matching his description, suggested he try Prescott." Jenkins adjusted his gun belt. "He didn't believe me, I don't think. Been watching the schoolhouse from the saloon all day." "He'll recognize me," Hannah whispered. "What should I do?" "Nothing yet. Edith spreading word among folks we trust. Caleb's been sent for." The sheriff's eyes were kind but determined. "Miss Elliott, Chloride might not look like much, but we protect our own, especially our teacher." Hannah fought back tears at the simple declaration. "Thank you. Stay here until Caleb arrives. I'll keep an eye on our visitor." After the sheriff left, Hannah sank into her chair, trembling. One day. She'd had one day of peace before the past found her again. When the schoolhouse door opened 30 minutes later, she jumped to her feet, relaxing only when Caleb's familiar form appeared. "I heard," he said without preamble, crossing to her in 3 long strides. "Are you all right?" "He's found me already," Hannah said, the reality crushing her newfound hopes. "I'll have to leave again." "No." Caleb's hands gripped her shoulders, gentle but firm. "Running hasn't worked before. It won't work now. We face this together. You don't understand what these men are capable of, and they don't understand what we're capable of." His eyes held such conviction that Hannah found herself wanting to believe. "Sheriff's deputized me and 3 others. Victor Atwood is being watched. If he makes one wrong move, he'll find himself in jail or worse." "And when more men come, when Preston himself comes?" Hannah asked, voicing her deepest fear. "Then we'll deal with that too." Caleb's hand moved to cup her cheek. "I know we've known each other barely a week. I know this is fast and probably foolish, but I'm not letting anyone take you from Chloride unless it's what you want." The sincerity in his eyes undid her. Hannah leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his certainty. "I don't want to leave," she admitted. "Not when I've just found something worth staying for." Something shifted in Caleb's expression: surprise, hope, and something deeper. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head and kissed her. It was nothing like Preston's calculated, possessive kisses. Caleb's lips were gentle, questioning rather than demanding, offering rather than taking. When they parted, Hannah found herself breathless in an entirely new way. "We should get you somewhere safer than this schoolhouse," Caleb said, his voice rougher than before. "Edith's offered her spare room." "Victor won't expect you to be there." Hannah nodded, still processing the emotions that single kiss had unleashed. "What happens tomorrow?" "The children's school continues as normal, but with a deputy posted outside. We're not letting him disrupt your life or this town." Caleb offered his arm. Ready to face whatever comes next, Hannah took his arm, her decision made. Together, the next 3 days established a tense pattern. Hannah taught during the day with a deputy discreetly posted outside the schoolhouse. She spent nights at Edith's home, the older woman proving to be both fierce guardian and unexpected confidante. Caleb visited each evening, bringing news and staying late into the night, their conversations growing deeper as they learned each other's histories and hopes. Victor Atwood remained in Chloride, taking a room at the hotel, watching and waiting. He visited the saloon each night, attempting to gather information from loosened tongues, but found the townspeople unexpectedly close-mouthed about their new teacher. Several times he approached children after school, only to be intercepted by deputies or concerned parents. On Thursday evening, as Hannah and Caleb sat on Edith's back porch watching the sunset, Sheriff Jenkins arrived with troubling news. "Atwood sent a telegram to Denver this morning. Couldn't see the content, but I'd wager he's reporting your location and requesting reinforcements." Hannah's hand found Caleb's, gripping tightly. "How long before they arrive?" 4-5 days minimum, the sheriff calculated. "Depends on how quickly they move and how many men come." Caleb's expression hardened. "We need to resolve this before then. I won't have Hannah living under constant threat." "Got any suggestions?" Jenkins asked. "Man hasn't broken any laws I can arrest him for." "What if we confronted him directly?" Hannah suggested suddenly. Both men turned to her in surprise. "He's waiting for Preston's instructions. What if we don't give him that time?" Caleb shook his head immediately. "Too dangerous. He's already proven he's willing to kill you." "But not in front of witnesses," Hannah pressed. "What if I confronted him publicly? Forced him to reveal his true intentions where everyone could see?" A slow smile spread across the sheriff's weathered face. "The lady might be onto something. Town socials tomorrow night. Everyone attends. Be mighty hard for him to make a move with 50 witnesses. And if he denies everything?" "Claims he's just a concerned family friend," Caleb objected. "Then I'll tell the whole truth," Hannah said firmly. "About Preston, about the abuse, about everything. Let Chloride judge who's telling the truth." Caleb studied her with newfound respect. "You do that. Share those private horrors publicly, if it means stopping Preston's hold over me, yes." Hannah met his gaze steadily. "I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of shame for something that was never my fault." After a long moment, Caleb nodded. "All right, but we take every precaution. He's still dangerous." "I'll have deputies positioned throughout the social," Jenkins promised. "One wrong move from Atwood, he's done." As the sheriff departed, Caleb pulled Hannah closer on the porch swing. "You're the bravest woman I've ever known, Hannah Elliott." She rested her head against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Not brave, just tired of fear controlling my life." After a pause, she asked, "Will you stand with me tomorrow when I face him? Wild horses couldn't keep me away." His arm tightened around her. Whatever happens, we face it together. Friday night's social was Chloride's monthly celebration, held in the large meeting hall above the assay office. Lanterns cast warm light over tables laden with food brought by townspeople. A small band played lively tunes, and children darted between dancing couples and conversing adults. Hannah entered on Caleb's arm, wearing a borrowed dress of deep green that Edith insisted brought out her eyes. She'd styled her hair more elaborately than usual and wore her mother's locket prominently. If she was to face her past tonight, she would do so looking confident and established, not like the frightened woman who'd been dragged behind a horse. She spotted Victor immediately, standing near the punch bowl, his city clothes marking him as an outsider despite his attempts to blend in. Their eyes met across the room, and Hannah saw the flash of recognition, followed by calculating assessment as he noted Caleb beside her and the deputies positioned throughout the room. "He's seen me," she whispered to Caleb. "Let him come to us," Caleb murmured back. "Better on our terms." They moved through the room, greeting townspeople, accepting congratulations on Hannah's successful first week of teaching. Each friendly interaction strengthened her resolve. These people had accepted her, protected her. She would not allow Victor or Preston to take this new life from her. It took nearly an hour before Victor approached, choosing his moment when Hannah stepped away from Caleb to speak with a student's mother. His voice, when it came from behind her, was as coldly professional as she remembered. "Miss Holloway, what a surprise finding you in such a rustic setting." Hannah turned slowly, aware of conversations quieting around them as people sensed confrontation. "My name is Elliott, Mr. Atwood. As you well know." His smile never reached his eyes. "A temporary confusion. Mr. Holloway will be relieved to know his fiancé is safe after her unfortunate illness." Illness. Hannah's voice carried clearly in the now hushed room. "Is that what Preston calls it when a woman refuses to marry a man who beats her?" Murmurs rippled through the gathered townspeople. Victor's expression hardened fractionally. "Your mental confusion is well documented by respected Boston physicians. Mr. Holloway has been most concerned. Mr. Holloway is concerned about losing what he considers his property." Hannah interrupted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Just as he sent you to retrieve me by any means necessary, including trying to kill me by dragging me behind a horse." Gasps and angry mutters followed this accusation. Caleb appeared at Hannah's side, his presence reassuring without being controlling. Victor's mask slipped briefly before he regained composure. "I did nothing of the sort. I've simply been searching for a confused young woman from a prominent family. You tied my hands and spooked that horse deliberately," Hannah said, stepping closer, her fear transforming to righteous anger. "You said you'd make an example of me for embarrassing the Holloway name. You expected me to die in the desert." Preposterous accusations from an unstable sheriff. Jenkins stepped forward. "Several witnesses saw a man matching your description fleeing the scene after Miss Elliott was rescued." Atwood. Victor's eyes darted around the room, noting the hostile faces surrounding him. His hand moved subtly toward his jacket. "I wouldn't," Caleb said softly, his own hand resting near his holstered pistol. "Not unless you're eager to meet your maker tonight." For a tense moment, the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. Then Victor straightened, his expression coldly professional once more. "This changes nothing. Mr. Holloway will come for what's his. A backwater mining town can't stand against his influence." "Perhaps not," came Edith Harris's sharp voice as she pushed through the crowd. "But influence works both ways, young man. I've taken the liberty of writing my cousin at the Chicago Tribune about a Boston socialite who beats women and sends thugs to murder them when they escape. Think your employer wants that story published?" Color drained from Victor's face. "You wouldn't dare." "I've included sworn statements from those who saw Miss Elliott's condition when she arrived," Edith continued implacably. "The letter leaves on tomorrow's stage unless you return to Boston with a message. Hannah Elliott is under chloride's protection. Any further attempts to harm her will result in public scandal that will destroy the Holloway name far more effectively than a broken engagement ever could." A heavy silence fell as Victor weighed his options. Finally, his shoulders slumped fractionally. "You're making a powerful enemy." "Better that than living in fear," Hannah replied. "Tell Preston I'm no longer running. If he persists, I'll tell every newspaper from here to Boston exactly what kind of man hides behind the Holloway fortune." The confrontation seemed to deflate Victor. Without another word, he turned and pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Sheriff Jenkins nodded to two deputies, who followed discreetly. As the door closed behind them, the tension broke. Conversations resumed, the band struck up a lively tune, and townspeople approached Hannah with expressions of support and outrage on her behalf. Caleb's arm slipped around her waist. "You did it," he murmured in her ear. "We did it," she corrected, looking up at him with eyes bright with unshed tears of relief. "I couldn't have faced him without knowing you were beside me." Later, as they stepped outside for air, the stars spread like diamonds across the desert sky, Caleb turned to her. "He might still come himself." Hannah nodded. "He might, but for the first time I'm not terrified of that possibility. Preston's power has always been secrecy and shame, without those weapons." She smiled, a genuine expression of newfound freedom. "Besides, I have something now worth standing my ground for." "Chloride's growing on you that quickly," Caleb teased gently. "Not just chloride." Hannah gathered her courage and placed her hand against his cheek. "You saved more than my life when you cut that rope, Caleb Crawford. You gave me a chance to discover what I really want." "And what's that?" he asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "A life where I'm not running, where I can teach children and build something meaningful, where I can perhaps love someone who sees me as an equal, not a possession." Caleb's hands came to rest at her waist, drawing her closer. "I think that can be arranged, Miss Elliott, starting right now." Their kiss beneath the desert stars felt like a promise of safety, of partnership, of possibilities neither had dared imagine before a runaway horse and a desperately needed rescue had brought them together. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of normalcy that felt miraculous to Hannah. She taught her classes, gradually winning over even the most reluctant students. She took meals with Edith, who proved to be a fountain of practical frontier wisdom. And every evening, Caleb visited, their relationship deepening with each conversation and shared moment. Victor Atwood departed on the eastbound stage the morning after the confrontation, his cold glare promising this wasn't truly over. But for now, at least, the immediate threat had passed. On a sunny Saturday, Caleb took Hannah riding into the desert surrounding his ranch, showing her hidden waterfalls and ancient petroglyphs left by peoples long vanished. They picnicked beside a small spring where improbable wildflowers bloomed among the rocks. "I never imagined such beauty in a place that seems so harsh at first glance," Hannah said, trailing her fingers through the cool water. "That's the desert's secret," Caleb replied, watching her with undisguised affection. "Life finds a way even in the harshest conditions. You just have to know where to look." Hannah met his gaze. "Is that what you did? When you came west with nothing, I suppose so." He picked up a smooth stone, turning it in his fingers. "Had to adapt, learn new ways of seeing things. The desert teaches patience and resilience. You've certainly mastered both, she observed with a smile. Caleb set down the stone, his expression growing serious. Hannah, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. Her heart quickened at his tone. Yes. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a short time. But sometimes life doesn't give you the luxury of waiting when you're certain about something. He took her hands in his. I love you, Hannah Elliott. I think I started falling for you the moment I cut that rope and caught you in my arms. Hannah's breath caught. Caleb. I'm not asking for an answer today, he continued quickly. Just for you to consider something. I know you value your independence, especially after what you escaped. But would you consider? That is, would you think about perhaps someday becoming my wife? Tears sprang to Hannah's eyes, not of fear or sadness, but of overwhelming joy. You'd want to marry me, even knowing Preston might still come, especially knowing that. Caleb's thumbs traced circles on her palms. I want to stand beside you through whatever comes, good or bad. Not because you need protection, but because we're stronger together than apart. Hannah considered his words carefully, appreciating that he hadn't rushed her or presumed her answer. This was so different from her arrangement with Preston, a question asked with respect, with no expectations beyond honest consideration. I don't need more time, she said softly. I love you too, Caleb Crawford. You've shown me what real strength looks like, not domination but support. Not possession but partnership. She squeezed his hands. Yes, I'll marry you, not from fear or necessity, but because I choose you freely and completely. The joy that transformed his face was breathtaking. Caleb gathered her into his arms, his kiss conveying everything words couldn't express: promise, passion, and abiding respect. When they finally parted, breathless and laughing, Hannah rested her forehead against his. What happens when Preston eventually learns I'm still here? Then we face him together, Caleb said simply, with the truth as our shield and each other as our strength. For the first time since fleeing Boston, Hannah truly believed the future held more promise than fear. 3 months later, Hannah Elliott became Hannah Crawford in a simple ceremony at Chloride's church. The entire town attended, the schoolchildren forming an honor guard that showered the couple with desert wildflower petals as they emerged into the autumn sunshine. Edith Harris had outdone herself organizing the celebration, transforming the town square into a festival of lanterns, flowers, and tables laden with food. Even the miners, who typically avoided social gatherings, appeared in freshly scrubbed faces and awkwardly worn Sunday clothes to congratulate their teacher and the rancher who'd won her heart. As they danced beneath the stars, Hannah in a cream-colored dress Edith had ordered specially from Tucson, Caleb leaned down to whisper, "Any regrets, Mrs. Crawford?" Hannah shook her head, her eyes shining. "Not one, though I do keep expecting something to interrupt our happiness." "Nothing will," Caleb promised, though they both knew such absolute guarantees were impossible. The guarantee seemed to hold through their first month of marriage, as Hannah settled into life at the ranch while continuing to teach in town. They established a routine: early mornings together before Hannah rode to school, Caleb working the ranch during the day, evenings spent building their life together. Weekends brought projects around the homestead, where Hannah proved surprisingly adept at gardening in the challenging desert conditions. On a crisp November morning, Hannah was gathering eggs from the small henhouse Caleb had built as a wedding gift when she heard approaching riders. Shading her eyes against the sun, she counted 3 men on horseback approaching from the direction of Chloride. Her heart stuttered when she recognized Sheriff Jenkins among them. The other 2 were strangers, one middle-aged and expensively dressed, despite the dust of travel, the other younger and alert in the manner of a bodyguard. Caleb emerged from the barn, alerted by the same sounds. His hand moved instinctively toward the rifle leaning against the corral fence before he recognized the sheriff. He crossed to Hannah's side, his stance protective without being possessive. "Trouble?" he asked quietly as the riders approached. I think Preston may have come himself," Hannah whispered, her throat dry. Caleb's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Together, remember," she nodded, drawing strength from his calm certainty. Sheriff Jenkins dismounted first, his expression apologetic. "Morning, Caleb, Mrs. Crawford. Got visitors asking after you. Said it was important." The well-dressed man dismounted with the stiff movements of someone unaccustomed to long rides. His features were refined, his bearing aristocratic despite the travel dust covering his expensive suit. But it was his eyes that Hannah recognized, cold, calculating, and used to power. "Preston," she acknowledged, her voice steadier than she expected. Preston Holloway Roman III removed his hat, revealing hair prematurely graying at the temples. "Hannah, you've led us on quite a chase." His gaze flickered dismissively over Caleb before returning to her. "I see you've been busy in my absence." "Not your absence, Preston, your past." Hannah's fingers tightened around Caleb's. "Why are you here? To resolve matters properly." Preston brushed dust from his sleeve with fastidious movements. "Victor's message was concerning but ultimately incomplete. I preferred to handle things personally." Caleb stepped forward slightly. "There's nothing to handle. Hannah is my wife now." A flash of genuine anger crossed Preston's face before his smooth mask returned. "A technical impediment, easily resolved. Hannah was promised to me before her. Unfortunate confusion." "I think we all know there was no confusion," Sheriff Jenkins interjected. "Just a woman escaping a dangerous situation." Preston's smile tightened. "Sheriff, this is a private matter between a man who sends thugs to drag women behind horses and the community that protected her." Caleb interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. "Nothing private about attempted murder, Holloway." Color rose in Preston's face. "Absolute nonsense. Victor exceeded his authority if he engaged in any rough handling. I merely sent him to bring home my fiancé, who was suffering from nervous exhaustion." Hannah felt something shift inside her, not fear, but a calm, clear anger. "The only thing I suffered from was your cruelty, Preston. We both know exactly what happened in Boston, what you did when I displeased you." "Ancient history," Preston dismissed with a wave. "Whatever misunderstandings occurred are in the past. I've come to bring you home where you belong, Hannah. Your parents are beside themselves with worry. My home is here now." Hannah gestured to the ranch around them. "With my husband, my students, and people who value me for myself, not as an ornament or possession." Preston's expression hardened. "This farce of a marriage can be annulled. I have the resources to make it happen." "One telegraph to the territorial governor would accomplish nothing," came a new voice as Edith Harris rode up on her mule, a leather portfolio clutched in her hand. "Except perhaps embarrassment for yourself." Preston turned, irritation clear on his face. "And you are Edith Harris." Witness to the legal marriage of Hannah Elliott and Caleb Crawford, duly recorded and recognized by the Arizona Territory. She dismounted with surprising agility for her age. "Also correspondent with my cousin at the Chicago Tribune, who found your family history quite fascinating." Wariness replaced Preston's irritation. "What are you implying?" Edith opened the portfolio, removing several newspaper clippings. "Seems the Holloway men have a pattern of nervous fiancés and wives. Your grandmother's mysterious fall down the stairs. Your mother's frequent accidents. Your first fiancé's sudden decision to enter a sanitarium." She held up the clippings. "My cousin's a thorough investigator. The blood drained from Preston's face. Scurrilous rumors and coincidences. Perhaps, Edith agreed pleasantly. But the public adores a scandal, especially one involving Boston's elite. My cousin's editor is quite excited about the series he's planning. Sheriff Jenkins cleared his throat. Mr. Holloway, I think you should know that every significant detail of Miss Mrs. Crawford's ordeal has been documented in sworn statements. Should anything happen to her or her husband, those statements and Miss Harris's research would immediately find their way to newspapers across the country. Preston's calculating gaze moved between them, assessing his position. Hannah could almost see the considerations weighing in his mind: his reputation, his family name, the scandal that would follow exposure. "You're making a grave mistake, Hannah," he said finally, his voice cold. "This primitive existence is far beneath you." "No, Preston," Hannah replied steadily. "My mistake was ever believing I needed to endure cruelty to have value. My life here has purpose, respect, and love, things your wealth could never buy." A tense silence followed, broken only by the desert wind and the soft nickering of horses. Finally, Preston replaced his hat with precise movements. "It seems I've had a wasted journey." His tone suggested bored dismissal, but Hannah knew him well enough to recognize the controlled rage beneath. "Sheriff, I'll be returning to Chloride to arrange transportation east." "I'll accompany you," Jenkins said, his hand resting meaningfully on his holster. Preston turned to Hannah one last time. "When you tire of playing frontier wife, you know where to find me." "She won't," Caleb said simply. With a final cold glance, Preston mounted his horse and rode away, his bodyguard and the sheriff following closely. As the dust settled behind them, Hannah felt the tension leave her body in a rush that nearly brought her to her knees. Caleb's arm around her waist steadied her. "He's really gone," she whispered, hardly daring to believe. "And unlikely to return," Edith said with satisfaction, repacking her portfolio. "Men like that care about their public image above all else. The threat of scandal is more effective than any gun." Hannah turned to the older woman. "How did you know to come? And those newspaper clippings?" Edith's eyes twinkled. "Sheriff sent a boy to fetch me when Holloway arrived in town. As for the clippings, well, my cousin did do some investigating after my letter, found enough to make our bluff convincing." She patted Hannah's hand. "Sometimes the appearance of power is as effective as actual power, my dear." After Edith departed, promising to return for dinner with full details of Preston's hasty departure from Chloride, Hannah and Caleb stood together in the yard, his arms wrapped around her from behind as they gazed at the mountains in the distance. "You think he's truly given up?" Hannah asked. Caleb rested his chin on top of her head. "I think he's a businessman at heart. The cost of pursuing you just became too high compared to the benefit." "Such a romantic assessment," Hannah teased, though she knew he was right. "Well, I could say he recognized the power of our transcendent love and surrendered to its majesty, but I doubt that factored into his calculations." Hannah laughed, turning in his arms to face him. "I prefer your honest assessment. It feels more certain somehow." "What's certain is this," Caleb said, his expression growing serious. "You're free, Hannah, truly free, not just from Preston but from the fear of him." The realization washed over her like desert rain, rare and precious. For the first time since fleeing Boston, Hannah felt the constriction in her chest fully release, the weight of constant vigilance lifting from her shoulders. "Free," she repeated, testing the word and finding it true. "To build our life together without looking over my shoulder." Caleb's smile was tender as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Any particular plans for this freedom, Mrs. Crawford?" Hannah's eyes sparkled with renewed purpose. "Many. Starting with expanding the school. Chloride needs proper education if it's going to grow. And perhaps. She hesitated, suddenly shy despite their intimacy, perhaps starting a family of our own. The joy that spread across Caleb's face was answer enough before he swept her into an embrace that lifted her feet from the ground. I think both those plans sound perfect. As he lowered her back to earth, their lips met in a kiss that held all the promise of their future, a future no longer shadowed by the past, but bright with possibility in this harsh, beautiful land they now both called home. 5 years later, Hannah stood on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching as Caleb taught their 4-year-old son Christopher to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter Caroline sat on a blanket nearby, solemnly arranging rocks in patterns only she understood. The ranch had prospered along with Chloride, though the town's fortunes had fluctuated with the silver market. Hannah's school had grown to require 2 teachers, allowing her to divide her time between education and family. Caleb had expanded his herd and added fruit trees and vegetable gardens that Hannah tended with increasing skill. News occasionally reached them from Boston. Preston had eventually married a docile banker's daughter, maintaining his social position while rumors of his temper continued to circulate quietly. Hannah's parents had written once, a stilted letter expressing neither regret nor genuine reconciliation, which she had answered with polite distance. None of that mattered now, watching her family in the golden afternoon light. The ranch hand Caleb had hired, a young man named Thomas, rode up with the mail from town. "Letter for you, Mrs. Crawford," he called, handing her an envelope. "From Miss Harris." Hannah smiled her thanks. Edith, now approaching 80 but still sharp as a desert thorn, had finally been persuaded to move to Tucson with her niece last winter after a bout of pneumonia. Her letters remained full of gossip, observations, and tart commentary on city life. Opening the envelope, Hannah found not only Edith's expected letter but a newspaper clipping that made her breath catch. Preston Holloway Roman III had died suddenly of apoplexy following a domestic dispute with his wife. The article noted that Mrs. Holloway had been treated for injuries consistent with a fall. Hannah felt no satisfaction, only a distant sadness for lives twisted by power and cruelty. She folded the clipping and tucked it away, focusing instead on Edith's news of Chloride's former students now attending university in California. "Mama, look." Christopher's delighted voice pulled her attention back to the present as he guided his pony in a careful circle, Caleb walking beside them. "Wonderful, sweetheart," she called back, her heart full. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the desert in gold and crimson, Caleb joined her on the porch, their children finally worn out from the day's adventures and settled for naps. "What was in Edith's letter?" he asked, noting her thoughtful expression. Hannah hesitated, then handed him the clipping. The past finally closing its chapter. Caleb read it quickly, his expression solemn. "Are you all right?" "More than all right," Hannah assured him, leaning against his solid strength. "I was just thinking about that day you cut the rope and caught me, how close I came to never having any of this." Caleb's arm wrapped around her shoulders. "I've thanked Providence every day since for putting me on that road at that moment." Hannah turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "You saved my life that day, but what you gave me after was even more precious. The chance to build something real, something true." "We built it together," Caleb corrected gently, the love in his eyes as steady and unwavering as it had been from the beginning. As twilight deepened around their home, Hannah Crawford, once a frightened woman running for her life, now a teacher, wife, and mother, stood secure in the knowledge that some rescues weren't just about saving a life, but about discovering what that life could become when nurtured with respect, courage, and abiding love. In the distance, a coyote called to the rising moon, and Hannah smiled at the sound that had once seemed so alien but now spoke of home. The rope that had nearly ended her life had been cut, but the hands that caught her had held on, through danger and joy, struggle and triumph. And would hold on, she knew with perfect certainty, for all the days to come.